Hey, welcome to Friends, Life, and Ministry. We're so glad you're joining us. Today, we're going to talk about and try to answer what we treasure. And as part of that, we're going to be talking about things that we're grateful for. Off the top, we're just assuming that we all treasure Father, Son, and Holy Spirit and our relationship with God. Right there we go. Bill's with us. But we're going to try to talk about things that we treasure because it's just striking that Jesus said, where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. And so what you treasure is a really important thing. So I'm going to go to my brother, Steve, out in California and ask him to answer first. What are some things that you treasure?
There are a lot of different things that I can think about that are valuable to me, our sons and uh, family members, all of that. But I think I can wrap it up and say memories. Um, there are people who have no memories of love or of trying to seek to serve or things that at towards the end part of your life, and I'll be 70, I'm looking back, and over these years, I've been a Christian for 52 years. And I just look at all of the different things that I know that only God could have done. Before we started recording, we talked about me meeting my bride. And that's, of course, a defining memory. But watching how God has shown up when we were in impossible situations. I had mentioned this at an earlier episode, but the very first church that we started, no one came to the first service. And we went back and prayed on that Sunday afternoon. And it was really shocking that I have the memory that some people came the following Sunday. And had that not happened, I think God had orchestrated both of those. We have seen God's faithfulness to us in so many different ways through times of joy and times of just absolute being distraught. And I'm grateful for all of those because they've woven me into the person that I am. And so it's just wonderful at this age to be able to cherish memories. Um, as I talk to other people who are in my age range, they usually are talking about their work or some sports memory that they had, something like that. And I just think that um, these memories of God's movement has been amazing.
How do you work to cultivate those memories and kind of bring them back to the forefront?
Um, a lot of times when I wake up in the morning, I'll kind of go through my life. Um, I've been an insomniac for most of my life. Um, and thanks to some newer medication, I'm doing much better now. But I wake up and I'll just, that count your blessings, name them one by one, count your many blessings, see what God has done. Um, I will just recount and take the time to think of the God moments that my life was able to be a part of, where He was blessing me with an experience. They weren't always fun experiences, but He was shaping me by them. And then, when I wake up the next morning, I think I am focused on what the future would be.
I listened to a podcast recently, and they were saying that when you remember something from the past, a past blessing, a past joy, that your body actually re-experiences it. Your body and nervous system
Well,
can tell the difference between a remembered event and an original event, so that whenever you're going through challenges, difficulty, or just bored, if you hit on memories, you will get the you'll get all the experience of that again. I think you're so right, Steve. So many people don't take the time to remember and just think about the things they've experienced. So if you're listening today, think about your own life. When was the last time you intentionally took time to review God's blessings or just the joys you had? Let's go to John. John, what would be
before you go to John, think about the cross and the Last Supper.
Yes.
What did Jesus say? Remember me.
Yeah.
Remember.
And remember me until I come again. That
Amen.
it's like you every time you celebrate communion, you relive your salvation moment.
Good thought.
Hmm.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Well, I mean, my treasure moments, there are many, and actually it's changing all the time. I mean, this week I've been touched a couple of times and those become my treasure moments. But they don't stay there long because there are too many moments. But if I have to count my blessings, Steve, I don't think I would. I don't know. Would be so hard because there'd be so many, and at the same time, I'm blessed that my memory isn't so good in one way. It's that I get stuck there. But one of the things that really touch me is when I see a move or a touch of God in a person's life, and those are like amazing. I mean, I saw a couple of those this week, and sometimes it's live. I'm part of it myself. But even sometimes, I mean, for example, I treasure now a moment of a clip that I saw online where a whole family, a father, mother, and three children were baptized together. The children were like, close to their teens, and the parents had also become, and I saw them, the five of them being baptized together. I mean, it's like, for me, that's like, I mean, this is like the beginning of the New Testament where the whole extended families were, and for me that's something that sticks there. It becomes like like a tremendous treasure, and I think that okay, it's possible there, it's possible here, and it becomes like a treasure to keep. But at the same time, new things happen. Just a day or so later, I mean, Tuesday, I was tremendously blessed with how God reached out to two women, and for me that's like a treasure, and I'm overcome with it. That's such a treasure. At the
John,
same
do you
time,
take time to do you pause and kind of reflect on those events when they come?
yes, I mean, and I think of them, and I like in that sense, I treasure them. At the same time, you can't, I realize also you can't have too many treasures in life, um, and and so in that sense, I think I have to change my way of thinking a little bit more according to what Steve just shared. And I have to remember more maybe and refresh it time after time again, because it's like you said, we're commanded to remember, and especially the Jewish people, they were told all the time to remember, 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 and they were repeating it, and so maybe I should learn to do that. Sorry.
There's an interesting line that Mary, Jesus's mom, says. It says about her that she treasured these things in her heart.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you picture her there standing at the cross, watching her son die, and what would sustain her? It would be those events that she treasured in her heart. But treasuring is actually an activity. It's a verb. It's an action you take. It's so taking the time to reflect on those or even write them down, relive them by remembering them, like Steve's suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, how about for you?
So many of the things you've said are good things, great reminders. Starting with your line, Paul, about where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. That I've talked about that a lot in terms of even financial things, that people say, well, if, I'll give to support something if I really believe in it. And I say, no, you give to support it and then you will believe it.
Yeah.
And I always say, if I gave you think of a stock you don't care about. Okay. Yeah. You don't care about Chevron. okay, I'm going to give you 100 shares of Chevron stock. Now, do you care more about Chevron? It follows that. But for me, every pastor is different. We all try to build great churches in our own way, but we have different definitions of what that greatness is. But for me, right from the beginning, when my grandfather was dying, I was in seminary. And the last thing my mother's father ever said to me is, go for souls, Bill. It's the only thing that matters. Just go for souls.
Amen.
And that really stuck with me, that doctrine and so many things are important. But ultimately, whether you end up in heaven or hell is the most important thing to me. And I believe in that. So my last Easter at Whittier, suburbs of Los Angeles, I had a bridge built. We were meeting outside because it wasn't more space for chairs and stuff. And I had a beautiful wooden bridge built. And the classic illustration we use about, we've got God over here, we've got man, and then the bridge between the two is Jesus Christ, right? And I got up from that bridge into my message, and I said, this is my last Easter with you. I am begging you to come and take a stand for Jesus Christ today. I've done funerals, and some of you men, your families don't even know if you're a Christian. And what are we going to say about you, when you leave this life? And just all I'm going to ask you to do is just come as a simple act. Walk slowly over this bridge as a witness that today you want to give your heart completely to Jesus Christ. And there was one guy named George in particular, and I had done his wife's funeral. And I when George walked over that bridge, I started crying because George was walking over that bridge and he stopped halfway through just to make sure that I saw he was walking over the bridge that day. Now, you ask me about that Easter, I can hardly tell you anything else that happened. But when I go back to visit, I stay at George's house. And because I keep up with my friend, and he writes me, now that I have my struggle with cancer, he writes me and he says, I hope your faith stays strong. We need your faith to stay strong, Bill. And I don't treasure anything more than that, Paul.
Yeah, what a great thing to treasure. And, it reflects some of what both John and Steve said, about those memories of God at work and people's lives and people putting their faith in Jesus. We had we had a police officer who was murdered last year. He was called to a domestic violence situation at a home and in a standoff. And the guy said he didn't have guns, and he had some really powerful guns, and he shot right through the wall, and so many bullets flew in. This young guy, just 28, died, and his as I've afterwards, just in connecting with his widow, she decided to take their wedding rings and make it into. She said, "I'm making them into a trophy because it's vows committed." And she said, "I'm not wearing them. I'm making them into a trophy and just putting it here that says this was a treasure we had. This was a trophy of God's grace and faithfulness." I just thought, what a powerful way to look at that. I think I try every morning to list at least 20 things I'm grateful for. I've talked to many people and psychologists that say if you list 20 things you're grateful for in the morning and in the evening, it literally does something in your body by doing that. And, one of the things I'm most grateful for is all the relationships, including with each of you. that I know that I could bring, I could talk to you about anything. I could ask you for help with anything. But a few years ago, I decided to try to meet with someone in every decade um, of kind of the life journey, or say I had a friend in that age, and I've got friends in a person I meet with in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I've got someone that I connect with every so often in their 90s. And the tapestry of those relationships is just so powerful in my life. When you hear what someone like who's 26, what they're thinking about. Now, I've got my grandkids too in their teens, and it's sort of the same, but it's kind of nice if it's not a family member and you just get their perspective. And I'll walk away from those meetings and I go, what a blessing it is to be able to have people in your life and people to talk to and connect with. And and so many of those times it's too talking about God or people that I've had an opportunity to connect them to God. Well, what are some of your practices, or what would you recommend to people that are watching this right now in terms of cultivating a life that remembers or cultivates a life that practices gratitude? Steve,
When
anything?
you do your list of 20, are they is there overlap? Are they the same 20 every day, or how does that work?
Well, I try to start with simple things, and sometimes they overlap. But then I try to I I try to add different ones to it. So I might start out and just go, I'm thankful. I'm thankful that the coffee was already made. I'm
Okay.
grateful for that. I'm grateful that I I have two legs and my legs are still working. I'm grateful that I have glasses so that I can see. Because without my glasses, I would have a really struggle to read. And then I try to move up to bigger things after that. I find that I wake up kind of grumpy with life.
Hmm.
I sometimes I tell people I wake up with bad breath and a bad attitude about life and God.
Who was it? The woman who said, "Sometimes I wake up grumpy in the morning, so I just let him go back to sleep and I go on with my day."
Steve, how about for you? What have you done to cultivate gratitude?
I think at this stage of my life, more so than when I was younger, is I try to live in the present. Memories are only built as they pass through our lives at that time in the present tense. And then if you capture them, then you can hold on to them for a lifetime. And so as I go through today, I will pay attention to the opportunities that I have. And I really enjoy the process of sharing the gospel. And Lynn and I went out uh, to lunch this last week, and this woman had a cross on her neck, and I looked at her and I said, "Oh, um, uh, you're a religious person out here in California. Um, uh, it can be kind of odd to be religious." And she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, you're wearing a cross." And I said, "That's really neat. I'm trying to explore more and more about God. Maybe you could tell me some things about God." And uh, she said, "Well, I don't really know. I guess I'm exploring too." And I said, "Well, would you like to hear a few things that I've learned so far?" And because she was in her early 20s and I was 69. So I said, "Well, I'm 69 and I've been doing this for a while. here's a few things that I've learned. And then, so she came back, and so she thought that I was saying that she was a spiritual person, which she is. She just hasn't put everything together yet. And then her mom came walking in. I told her, I said, "You have a wonderful daughter." I said, "She's been helping me understand God more." She said, "She's been what?" I said, "Yeah, she's a spiritual person." And it was her mom ended up leaving, and she ended up just uh, talking more about the whole thing. And I was able to communicate the core of the gospel, and God is going to have to use those words, which he always does. But that was a present tense memory, which I'll remember forever. It's this, she had kind of this, is it called goth, where you wear a lot of black? And for some reason, they wear a lot of black and they'll wear a cross. And so it surprised her when I tried to define for her that she was a spiritual person and that I was looking for help.
Steve, you are so crazy good at
He is.
sharing faith. It's just every time I learn new things. Hey, we're up, our time's over. So our advice to you is remember those things, relive them, and be grateful. Thanks for listening.